Hello and welcome to Jamie's Wee Podcast. On this episode, I am excited and intrigued to be joined by Mr. Edward Dangerfield, who is a world-leading expert when it comes to all things the nervous system. For those of you who may be familiar with breathwork, meditation or movement, or even if you're just intrigued to find out what these things might entail, we'll get prepared for an incredible insight from one of the best in the business. Mr. Edward Dangerfield, welcome to Jamie's Wee Podcast.
Thank you, bro.
What about that introduction? Did you like that?
Yeah, I'm stoked. Yeah.
Okay, you'll not top that.
No, that's the best one I've ever had, I think. Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. First, can I just say, I cannot stop saying your name, Mr. Edward Dangerfield.
Yeah.
It sounds like you could be in the next Avengers movie.
It's a pretty funny one. It's a funny one to grow up with as well.
Is that your real name?
Yeah, so born, real name.
Okay.
My dad's name.
Senior Dangerfield.
His dad's dad, yeah.
You come from a long line of Dangerfields.
Believe it or not, yeah. And I grew up on the Isle of Wight. So I grew up in southern England. Okay. And then my accent's confused. I moved to Canada. So I've got this like hybridized English-Canadian accent. Mm-hmm. But I grew up on the Isle of Wight, so a small community. And I just grew up with that name. And it was like, because it was a small community, I didn't even realize it was weird, you know? It was just like, everyone knew me.
Right.
So it was kind of normalized for them.
Not until you left the Isle of Wight that it became weird.
And everyone was like, your name's what? And then I realized, I guess it's kind of funny.
It's cool. I thought it was like maybe a stage name.
Yeah.
Maybe you're trying to evade tax.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, or become a famous breath worker.
Aye,
yeah,
there you go. Aye.
Yeah. But it's memorable, which is like everything a double-edged sword, right?
It really is. It can work against you or it can work for you.
Strongly.
Absolutely. I guess if you were an Avenger, your superpower would be breathwork.
My superpower is breathwork.
Breathwork.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That would be
my capacity to read people's breathing.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
You and Iron Man.
Yeah.
That make quite the double team.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm outflanked by all of the Avengers. It's just not that spectacular. Compared to those guys, I've got nothing.
Oh, you never know. Like, listen, don't play your breathwork skills down. I'm sure
in the world of breathwork, they're pretty good.
Aye.
But yeah, I'm not wearing an iron suit and flying through the sky.
Fair enough. Now, before we get started, I just want to say I actually handpicked you to be on this podcast. You're the first ever person to be handpicked to be on this podcast. Wow. It was around the idea, or the time I had the idea of starting this podcast is when I first actually encountered you. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
It was at an event at Zin Cafe, which is a restaurant and co-working space here in Canggu.
Yes.
And I remember they kind of went around the room and everyone was telling each other what they do and, you know, just like a kind of get to know you session. You had the usual like travel bloggers, people have businesses and all that kind of stuff. Then it got to you and then everyone just kind of like stopped and looked because you were like, everyone was just captivated by you, your story, what you do and just the way you tell it. I mean, I know I was anyway.
Thanks, bro. I remember the event.
You remember it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then that's, I mean, I knew there and then, I thought this guy is going to be in my podcast. The podcast that I've not even created yet.
Perfect, bro.
So here we go.
Your intention. Like,
there you go.
Amazing manifestation.
I manifested it, and here we are. We're sat in your dining room here in Bali.
Yeah.
And I've made it happen.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good for you, bro. It's awesome.
Now I know you're a very busy man, and you're very sought after. So I appreciate you taking the time to invite me around to your house.
Yeah, of course.
I always really enjoy it, and I really appreciate when people welcome me into their own home. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
I appreciate that.
I'm stoked to be on the podcast as well. I love to share.
And you brought a wee beer as well.
Yeah,
listen. That's us friends for life.
The fridge is empty.
Is it?
For 2 beers that have now been drunk. So
there we go. I'll cherish it. I'll cherish it. Thanks very much. So how long have you actually lived in this house?
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
Just new?
Yeah, 3 weeks. Just moved here.
Right,
and before I was living about 10 minutes inland.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so just moved here and I wanted to be closer to the beach. Right. So been in Bali about 4 months.
Okay.
And so we met pretty much
I was going to say.
I've been here like 2 weeks at that point,
right.
max. And then I found a place online. And it was one of those ones where, you know, finding accommodation online is a bit of a dice roll, right?
It's a bit sketchy here in Bali.
Yeah, so I found this place, rolled the dice, and when I arrived, it was a good 10 minutes further out than I had been led to believe.
Okay.
Which is all good. And so I just stayed there for a while until I found something closer that was really kind of fitting with what I wanted. So here we are.
Okay, and that's really cool. You gave me a wee tour earlier. It's, as you say, it's very minimalistic. It's very Bali.
Yeah.
That's a good setup, man.
Yeah, I like the minimalist, especially like for just clarity around like our environment has an impact on our lives,
right?
And our lives have an impact on our environment. So we're creating a feedback loop. So like I can put art on the walls, which is going to impact me, and then that affects me, and then would affect the kind of art that I would create.
Okay.
So
this is all your artwork.
So it's pretty funny actually. I run a painting group.
Okay.
Yeah, so we meet up.
Is it Genesis Studios?
Yeah. So we meet
they get a lot of plugs on this podcast. I'll tell you that.
We're at Genesis Studio.
Genesis Studios.
Yeah. So what I do is I get a group of us to turn up. Like we do it about once a month, and it's called the Dead Painters Society. It's just like a fun play on the Dead Poets Society film. So what we do is we just get together and I do a guided meditation, and then we paint. And it's for people that can be quite left-brain logical. It's an opportunity for us to get into a creative side. And it's really interesting to see the qualities of self-judgment that can come up.
Okay.
So it's all about the process and not what we're creating. It's about the self-reflection and the qualities of like, how do I judge myself when I'm just being artistic?
Yeah. Do you notice a difference before the meditation and then after the meditation?
Yeah, people are like, I don't know what I'm going to paint. And then I guide people in this guided meditation, and then afterwards everyone's just like
Picasso.
Into it. Yeah, just going for it. So yeah, this is these paintings are from the last workshop we did. So different crew of people. It's really interesting to see how like people's character plays out in art.
Yeah.
Like you can see how like people's behavior and character traits are demonstrated to canvas. It's super fun.
It's cool, man. So you're planning on filling your walls with all these canvas?
Yeah, so like gonna do one a month. So there's gonna be a couple of walls. Like this wall, I'm gonna build around it and just like add in some more paintings. And it's really memorable. Brady, who was on your last podcast.
Oh, really? Is this his?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's like, and then this is my friend Chiara DeLucia, who's a Kundalini yoga teacher and meditation teacher. So you can see like joy and smile. So like this really captures her. So like it's really like Brady, who's just left Bali. He was my roommate for like 2-3 months, and now I've got a little piece of his like heart and creativity hanging in my house, and it means so much to me.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
it really is beautiful. So next time I come in for maybe part 2, it'll be like an art gallery in here.
Yeah, all you'll see is just art everywhere. And I'll start selling them to people who come and do podcasts.
Better bring my wallet next time then, and a beer.
My whole experience.
Excellent. Do you live with anyone else here, or is it just yourself?
Yeah, just me solo.
Just yourself. Yourself.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. It's really cool. Well, happy new home.
Yeah, thanks so much, bro.
I hope you settle in well here.
Yeah, it feels really good now.
It feels good.
Super chill, close to the local market, and just I like the village style of it here. There's lots of different house opportunities in Bali. I've got some friends who've got these amazing villas with pools, and that's just...
It's not you?
Not really me.
Okay.
Yeah, I like
that's good. Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to do the Bali experience, I must admit.
Yeah.
I've stayed at places with pools and you pay extra for the pool and you barely dip your toe in the pool,
right,
you know, it's like, because the beach is right there.
Totally, and that's my passion, right? I love to surf, and so like for me, I prefer to be closer to the beach in a humbler place where I can actually get more time in the water. Yeah. Yeah.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So much sense. Now, you say you were born in the Isle of Wight. When did you move to Canada then?
Yeah, so it would have been 21.
21?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So grew up on the Isle of Wight, and then I studied in Exeter in southwest England.
Okay.
And then when I graduated, I had an opportunity to travel, and I just, at the time, you could get a 1-year Canadian visa right after you'd finish your studies.
Okay.
So I leapt to the chance. I was like, I'm going to Canada for a year. I'm getting out of the UK. It just wasn't really aligning for me. I needed to travel and see the world. So I wanted to go and do a ski season. I became a ski bum.
Okay.
And then I was there for a year in Canada.
Right.
And my visa ran out. I went back to the UK and I sank into a bit of a depression. Yeah. And I was just like, fuck it, I'm getting out of here. Okay. And so...
just been traveling ever since?
Yeah, well then I just moved back to Canada. I applied for residency. Okay. And I immigrated. Oh, wow. And then 1 year turned into 15.
15 years in sunny Canada.
Yeah, and it was about six years ago I got my Canadian passport and actually officially became a Canadian citizen. Right. And ironically sang the national anthem and then swore allegiance to the Queen of England, which is kind of funny because I'm English, so it was
easy for you then to pass that test.
Exactly, it was. So yeah, and then I was in Canada for 15 years, and then it would have been, just beginning of 2019 made a decision to move to Bali.
Okay.
I got fed up with winter.
Yeah, no,
And
I know the feeling well. Growing up in Scotland, I often
Yeah.
get fed up of winter and cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's time to get out, just enjoy some...
Chase the sunshine.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I also wanted to ground into a place where what I was doing for work was really like acknowledged and received, and people got it and were seeking it. And so like, you know, for half the North American population that have watched Eat, Pray, Love, they're all coming over here on their spiritual quest. And it's just like, that's just way easier. You know, for work, it's just so much easier when people are like really curious around the practices and what I do. So yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool. And as I say, well, as you touched on, your friend Brady here's got his stunning artwork on the wall, just behind you there. I had him on a podcast as well. It's probably going to air this Sunday.
Nice.
That'll be the next podcast I air. And he is also from Canada. Now, is there a big culture in Canada for these types of things, or is it just a complete fluke that my sample market of two are both kind of been in Canada?
Complete fluke.
Complete fluke, right? Okay.
I mean, I think it depends. Like Brady's from Toronto, so he's from more on the sort of, well, I would say east side of Canada, but it's even quite central. It's central east. And I'm from BC. Okay. So I've been living on the West Coast. Right. And in the West Coast in BC, like most of the West Coast of North America, like Washington, Oregon, and California, they have a tendency to be more liberal and to be associated more with kind of hippie, granola, tree-hugging vibes. Okay. You know, home of some brands like, you know, think about like Patagonia, Arc'teryx, and those kind of qualities. And so that culture of outdoorsing and connection to nature, I think leads to a greater capacity of mindfulness and activity and yoga and meditation. So I think from the West Coast, I would definitely say that that's like more of a mindset thing. Okay. I think Brady's just an epic anomaly from Toronto. Like, really? Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah. But for me, I mean, there's certainly for breathwork as well. There's a pretty high volume of breathworkers in British Columbia. Right. It's like one of those places that seems to have a lot, mostly because of like there's a few great teachers who are operating there, and then you know that just kind of it starts to spread. It becomes dynamic. So okay. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So that it's not just Canada where all you guys come from, the spiritual breathwork and movement coaches and that. You know, there's just like kind of some factory that they made you in over there. You know, exactly. It's just by chance. Every second Canadian, it just happens to be a meditation. Now I wish. Yeah, we're moving that direction. Okay, no, that's good. That's good. We'll touch on that a wee bit later. Now, after doing my homework on you, it's hard to actually tie you down to one specific skill. You appear to have like an array of different talents. So why don't you tell us in your own words what it is you do? Thank you. So, like, very simply, I teach people to remember how to breathe properly or correctly. And in another way of saying that, I also create a shift in blood chemistry through changing the rhythm of breathing. And when the blood chemistry changes, it changes brain function. When brain function changes, we create malleability in the nervous system, and we allow for neuroplastic change. Wow. Do you put that on your CV? Or? Yeah, it's not like that. Like I said, I help people remember how to breathe. Is that the LinkedIn shortened version now? And then there's the like tech version of like, okay, well, how are you doing that? And it's like, well, I'm looking forward to getting more into this. That's an intriguing start, let me tell you that. And again, I go back to your friend Brady, and we actually, on the podcast, we spoke about you. He obviously speaks about you fondly because you're very good friends. Yeah. And we actually both agreed that you are some kind of sort of spiritual DJ because you bring all these elements together, you know? You're like Calvin Harris and someone, you know? I love that, bro. That's awesome. Spiritual DJ. Yeah. I like that as a label. Yeah, there you go. So maybe change your LinkedIn. Yeah, totally. Spiritual DJ. I am now. Formerly known as. An artist formerly known as. Can I say I'd never, up until that point where I actually met you at that speakers event, I'd never actually heard the breathwork before. Sure. And the next day, I remember I was absolutely buzzing. I remember I messaged you, I followed you, and I messaged you the next day saying I'm really interested to come. And it was just timings and Ivana's eye and all that kind of situation. It meant like I had to kind of look after her. So I unfortunately couldn't come to one of your events. But for me and all the other laymen's out there, I think you tried to simplify it there. But can you give us a really basic description of what breathwork is? Yeah, sure. So ultimately, breathing is the foundation of the rhythm of life.
Okay.
Which is like the foundation of the rhythm of the body and all organ systems and all systems that's come from that. So in essence, the inhale is activating the nervous system, and it actually turns on the activation of the endocrine glands that stimulate awakenness. And our exhale relaxes. So our exhale slows us down. So the easiest way to describe that is if we yawn, we're bringing in oxygen to activate ourselves. And if we sigh, we're letting go to relax.
Okay.
So the rhythm of our breath, our inhale activates and our sigh relaxes, right? So when we look at the rhythm of breathing, what that's doing is it's changing all of the organ systems. If we go for a run, the volume of breath increases. So our inhale increases to bring in more oxygen, and our exhale releases more carbon dioxide. And what happens is our blood chemistry changes.
Every time?
Yeah.
Every time you inhale, exhale.
Exactly. That's how amazing the body is.
Right.
So every time the rhythm of breath changes, the nervous system and then the endocrine system respond. And so if we have a couple of variables to breath, but if we were to just focus on the volume and the rhythm, we're looking at like our breath can be shallow and slow, or shallow and quick, and it can be voluminous and slow, or voluminous and quick.
Yeah.
And that depends on our activity. So our breathing is changing to meet our environment. So right now I barely need to breathe. Like we're hanging out in my house and I've got a beer.
Very chilled.
My body's just super relaxed, right? Which allows for me to be able to think in a different way.
Are you always in tune with your breath every moment in time, or?
Yeah, so there's a quality there. It's like we need to be conscious and subconscious of our breathing. Right. We are both. Like it's the the gateway into our subconscious. Because breathing is the one thing we can do both consciously and subconsciously. Yeah. It's the only function that has both of those.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. What about blinking? Because sometimes you blink.
Consciously and subconsciously. Yeah, I guess we could control that.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
You do, because when you start realising, I guess it's very similar. Once you notice the breath, you're very in tune to it, and you actually notice, like, if you're breathing in or out.
Yeah,
but
how I'm breathing.
But when you're going about your everyday life, it's like you are totally unaware of your breath.
Well, there's actually, now you mention it, there's a couple of things facially that we do, like, this is amazing, that we do where we're just, like, licking the lips or, like, yeah, but I think blinking's actually, like, because we can control it, but we don't have to.
I just threw a curveball your way there.
Totally, but in an epic way, because now like there's another window into the subconscious that I hadn't even considered.
Maybe
I'm gonna spend like 3 hours meditating with my blinking now.
Maybe I should be a blink work expert.
Maybe that would be your
that's
niche,
my calling.
your niche field.
Yeah, maybe I should get into blink work.
Blink patterning. Well, so like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is all about focusing on how eyes move, and you can see that like an eye twitch, like if someone looks to the left or right, up, down, it's going to be that they're accessing different parts of their brain. So you can start to read like eye twitch, eye movement, and so like this is the next level of like studying the human nervous system. I'm looking at how a client like moves into the office gives me an indication of how they live. So it's like, yeah. Anyway, I don't know if you want to go down.
No, that's you can go wherever you want with this. You've given me beer, so you can say whatever you want. If you want me to leave and you just crack on and keep chatting away, just let me know. I'll go and get more beers, and you can just keep.
I'll just have a monologue.
Yeah, a monologue. Yeah,
I'll down the street.
I'll head down to grab some more beers. Now, before we get into a little more detail about the skills that you practice and preach on a day-to-day basis, is this something that you have always done, or was there a life before breathwork?
Yeah, there was. There's a funny quote, like, I have to get this right, but it was something like, we have two lives and we realize the first one happens when we realize we've only got one, or something. It's like the second one starts when we realize we only got one. But the essence of that is like my life as a breathworker began when I got caught in an avalanche.
Okay. So I was going to ask, was there a specific moment?
Yeah, that was it. Right. It was like, I was a restaurant owner.
Oh, really?
And so I lived in a ski resort in Canada. I'd ski in the day and I'd work in the restaurant in the evening, and it was a pretty joyful existence. And yeah, my life took a huge left turn, and then subsequent downward spiral.
Okay.
when I got caught in an avalanche, super traumatic experience. Basically, it was skiing backcountry, which is something I did quite a lot, and so it was out of bounds of the area that was patrolled and controlled for avalanche, bombed. And so friend and I were just skiing. We were skiing a pitch that we'd already skied that day, second run, and the whole side of the mountain gave way and moved with me. And it was a large volume of snow, and I just, I was just tumbling, and like it was totally terrifying. Like I've never experienced such a gripping feeling of loss of control and abject fear. And so like, I swam in this like super dense snow to try and stay on top. And as the mountainside was coming down with me, I managed to stay up on top of it. And when it came to a stop, I was buried up to about here. So I wasn't actually full burial, so I could still breathe. And then my friend who'd watched the whole thing he'd skied it first and then pulled out to the side, he came down and kind of dug me out. And I was pretty messed up up there.
So that was like the definitive moment where pretty much everything changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, at that time, I then decided it was a good idea to leave the restaurant.
Just there and then?
Yeah, I mean, I was already making moves to exit, and then it was just like, that was it. I stopped. Basically, I sold out.
Just mentally and physically just checked out at that moment.
Yeah,
just that was it.
Yeah, and then I was in a relationship at the time, and that fell apart as well. I went traveling. I lost myself. I was desperately seeking some answers.
Okay.
Yeah, and my whole system was like, now when I look back on that, it all makes sense. But at the time, like my whole system was dysregulated. I was burnt out. We'd built the restaurant for about 3 years at that point. So I just been like in full type A overachiever entrepreneur mode. And in the restaurant industry, which is super challenging, and throw that into a ski resort, it's just like super up and down. So it was like a lot of late nights, messing with the circadian rhythm, a good amount of whiskey being thrown in late at night, disrupting sleep pattern consistently, up early in the morning, skiing super hard, lots of adrenaline, not much rest, and then like throw in like a challenging codependent relationship. And you like put any human in that situation, and it's going to lead to ultimately emotional dysregulation and burnout.
Yeah.
So I burnt out really hard, and then as I was burning out, I got caught at an avalanche. So I wasn't even in great condition to recover.
Do you believe this was some kind of like divine intervention?
Yeah, totally. It's like the biggest wake up call.
Yeah.
I think the universe, like I wouldn't say like it gives us, but we attract in, we create our experiences to wake up. Like that's the thing, and like we could say that from a super esoteric or like a karmic point of view. But like when we study trauma, we know that the body wants to get complete. So what that means is like if we have a big traumatic experience and we don't fully complete it, we'll attempt to recreate that over and over again until we do, which is pretty fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So that's why, like, as an example, if a child is born with that cord wrapped around their neck, they have a higher percentage of attempting suicide through hanging.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'd never heard that before,
Yeah.
but it makes complete sense.
Yeah, so it's imprinting. It's
like if you enter the world that way, then...
Yeah, so if we're born a certain way, we'll show up in life a certain way. So like breech babies like to do everything backwards.
Right.
So anyway, like birthing, there's a whole, like, this comes from Dr. Stan Groff. And Stan Groff is one of the pioneers in breathwork, but he has a whole, like, 3 chapters in his book detailing how the first segments of birthing and then like the first year of our life fully imprints how we're set up for the rest of our life.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's wild.
I'd never even thought about that.
Yeah, and you unpack it, like go into your birth story and start to unpack it, and then you're like, oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Between that blew me away because it's really tangible, and I love left brain logical stuff. So when it comes to breathwork, I know like it's super mystical and epic, and we go on these crazy journeys. And I also love the science of it.
Yes.
So for me, I like blending those 2 parts of me, the brain, the left and the right.
That's why we call you the spiritual DJ.
Yeah.
You just bring all the elements together.
I love it, bro.
No, I actually remember this story about the avalanche and stuff, and you spoke so openly about like your PTSD and the depression that followed the avalanche.
Yeah, thank you, bro.
And hearing you talk so open and honestly about your mental health issues it was like instant respect.
Yeah.
Because in recent years myself, I've been really open and honest about my own depression and anxiety moments where I've went through depression and anxiety. And again, as I said to you before we started this, it's really something that I always try and touch on with this podcast because I feel like that's a value that we can all give, talking about our own experiences of, feeling not okay at certain points and how that impacts you,
Totally.
So I know it's a really not depressing, but I feel like it's quite important to talk about these things. But what are your thoughts right now on this? Like, it's almost like an epidemic in male depression, anxiety, and suicides.
Yeah.
Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got lots of thoughts on it. I mean, Yeah, thanks for your honesty as well and for sharing. And I think this is kind of like part of our own healing journeys and everybody else's, is to normalize what are like suppressed emotions and felt senses and the struggle that we're facing, like almost culturally and collectively. So yeah, like speaking from my own experience, I went into like that high state of anxiety, which was indicative of an adrenal response that never completed. Right. So it was just like I was in a fight-flight response. I didn't get complete on it. So my body was still under threat, and it still kept running the same amount of adrenaline. And, that was probably amped up from my childhood when, my parents, bless them, I love them both dearly, and they were doing the best that they could when they got divorced when I was 3. And then I was raised with my mum. My dad was, in and out of the picture there for a few years through no fault of his own. He was doing the best that he could as well. And so what that led to was a high volatile environment in my childhood. Mm-hmm. And that patterned into my nervous system. It patterned into my breathing. It patterned into my capacity to emotionally regulate. But it ended up with me being this kind of type A overachiever and I had to push and go and didn't know how to rest. And so that had an impact on my body system, which created the felt sense of anxiety. And for me, when I speak to anxiety with most of the clients that I'm working with, it kind of sits just below the rib cage, and it's just so awkward feeling that's like eating them up inside. And generally, it's an inability to open up and breathe up through the rib cage. And so there's a correlation between breathing patterns and sensation and emotion. Right. So every breath has an emotional quality that goes with it. And so what I found really rapidly was my mental health was directly related to the way I was breathing. Okay. And my mental health was directly related to
How did you find that correlation between the two? Is there
through breathwork, yeah. Initially through just going to a workshop.
Okay, so obviously you had the PTSD. Yeah. You left the restaurant industry and skiing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. When did you find breathwork?
Thank you. Yeah. So I went on this mission, which is now basically I'm 6 years on from the avalanche, and so the first year I just pulled the plug on society, and I left and I went and lived in a stone cottage for 3 months, off grid.
Wow. And into the wild.
Yeah. And then I reintroduced myself back into society, and I managed about a year and a half. I saved up some more money, and then I went and did 6 months again, like just in a stone cottage in Portugal, just in the middle of nowhere. Wow. And I just did a qigong practice and meditated and worked on the land and got used to the rhythms of nature, and like had no social media, no influence, no dopamine addiction for likes or any of that fun stuff. And I had very little contact with community. And it was like one of the most challenging and joyful experiences of my life. It was amazing, but it was just, I needed to
disconnect.
And then also just reconnect to self, disconnect from everything else to find like what was going on within me and how it was an exploration of relationship. I was understanding how I related to nature, mm-hmm. to food, to water, to the sun, to the birds and the things around me. It was amazing. It was one of the most simple ways to live. I lived off grid in a little cottage. I had stream water from a gravity-fed shower and a solar panel for music and journal.
That must have been very difficult to leave.
Yeah, it was massive. It was idyllic, but I ran out of money.
Right. Okay.
And it was just
unfortunately.
Yeah. And it was a really interesting time. I was trying to figure out how to increase my runway and be able to stay there longer. And at the time, I couldn't figure it out. I had a skill set running restaurants, but I was in central rural Portugal, and there was just there was no way I was going to be able to. I couldn't meet the environment. I couldn't bring through what I knew. Yeah. So I left and went back to Canada again, and carried on working in the restaurant business. And then at that time, I was just on this healing mission. So I took all of my earnings for 3 years plus the savings from selling out of the restaurant, and I would say I blew it all on healing. But I went on this mission of just being once I'd done enough treatments in weird esoteric stuff, I was like, I'm going to start training in Chinese massage. Right. And I just started going on these courses, being like, I wonder what this shit is, It was it was I had this I wasn't doing it necessarily to help other people initially, or to become knowledgeable or accredited or good at anything. I was doing it to try and save my own life. Okay. And I was I can't get there was one point, shortly about 3 months after the avalanche, I almost took my life. And that was like the lowest. I remember it was just the lowest point of my life. I was standing in the middle of a 4-lane highway in Peru, and I was like 8 beers deep.
Wow.
Tall ones, you know.
Yeah, the big ones,
the big dirty Peruvian ones.
And the big old South American beers.
Yeah, exactly. Full of formaldehyde and all sorts of magical things. And I was standing there in the middle of a 4-lane highway, and a bus was coming towards me, and I'll never forget that moment. Like, that was like the second big awakening. And I stood there, and I was like, I remember asking myself this question: is this it? And I just remember standing there and just being in this like total state of like denial and bewilderment, and so many just brutal emotions moving through me. And I just remember the bus blew past my face, and this like it was just like, and I knew in that moment that wasn't it.
Yeah. And
then there was this rush of energy that moved through my body, and it like moved from the base of my spine up through me, and I was just like, what the fuck was that? Yeah. And then I got out of the middle of the road and curled up in a ball in like the middle of the dirt in some like favela in Peru, and I just cried my eyes out for like 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And it was the most beautiful and epic release.
Wow. And
I think that was like all of the shit that I'd been storing up and bottling up and trying to be good enough and working hard and trying to please this partner that was never going to be pleased, and nothing I ever did was good enough. And then the restaurant going up against endless critics and reviews and so many dynamic moving parts. That was just too much, and so like I just I fully collapsed and surrendered to the earth and cried in the dirt. And then carried on the mission, and it would have been like I guess about a year later, I was practicing a lot of yoga and a lot of meditation, and I was I'd been really strict with myself. I was full paleo. I'd been paleo for about a year, which also meant no alcohol, no substance, no caffeine, exercise and yoga. I was militant with myself. It was like, anything that might have been considered fun was also removed. It was just like, I got to get myself healthy. Yeah. And so like I just created a huge amount of self-discipline, had a journaling practice, and connected with the wilderness and nature a lot. And then, I went to this randomly, the yoga studio I was a member of. It was just this little sign on a chalkboard. It said Breathwork. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll go check that out.
I mean, if you've tried the Chinese massage, you're going to try Breathwork.
Yeah, Breathwork. You're like, well, what can this be? Breath and work, two very familiar words put together. I'm like, I had no idea. So I turned up to this workshop, and it was really small. It was like 5-6 people there. And the teacher was there, and his name was Robin Clements. And I was kind of blessed that I had randomly had stumbled upon this breathwork class in my local studio with just 6 people, and here was this teacher who was like 20 years of experience and internationally renowned, and I had no idea. And there he was with his wife who was pregnant, and they guided us on this journey. And it was within about 6 minutes of practicing the technique that I started to feel sensations that I've never felt before in my life. And I started to feel this tingling and power, and then this contraction and numbness, and then it turned into this terrifying journey. I was actually in a huge amount of fear that came over my body. And at one point, Robin came over with this huge eagle wing and just fanned me down. I was like sweating through my shirt, and just like huge, like massive experience. It was fucked and awesome. And then I came out the other side of that panting, that breath. And it was a combination of reliving the fear of the avalanche and reliving high altitude pulmonary edema, which I also had in Peru, which is another near-death experience. So I was like, 2 near-death experiences in 3 months plus suicide. It was a big transformational time.
That's incredible. What an incredible story, man.
Yeah.
It sounds like that the universe has intervened a few times with you. I think you.
Some strong guidance, bro.
If you're a cat, I think you're in your last life.
Yeah, I'm definitely like 3 down for sure.
At least 3 down. Yeah. It's a fascinating story, man. A really fascinating story. It's a lot to process. Yeah. But it gives you there's a lot of substance there that that people will find a lot of value in your story.
Yeah, thank you.
People go through a lot of failures, such as things like your restaurant or things like that, or going through traumatic experiences like your PTSD through the avalanche. So I think we all have our traumas at certain points in life, and we all get to the point where you step in front of a bus in Peru full of beer. Maybe not to that extent, but it's similar mindsets where you feel like, I've had enough.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You know what's crazy as well? The sharing of it is like sharing, like, there's this random piece that this still feels like you and I having a couple beers, and it's just like, there's this amazing quality there. It's just like, this is probably going to be heard and seen by quite a few people, and that's awesome. But I've noticed when I share with people in this way, what can invariably come up is they'll share that they've had a similar experience, or they've been to the edge, and they know where the edge is, and that's where the deep growth happening.
It does. I mean, I had my own experience of this. I mean, there's been a lot of things, and I've spoken about it candidly and openly about like my relationship with suicide and my family and stuff like that. And it was a moment in Japan for me. There was no rhyme or reason why I felt as low as I felt, but we were about 6 or 7 months into full-time travels. And that is when I really realised and I vocalised the fact that I was depressed. I couldn't lift my head from the pillow. And what I'd done at that moment in time, I was crying into the pillow. I was with Ivana. We were in Japan. Absolutely no rhyme or reason to feel the way I felt. I just got on my phone and I wrote in the notes exactly what I felt. And it just came out, and it was like, I think it was like 8,000 words I wrote in that moment.
Holy shit, bro.
And in that moment, I thought, I'm going to put this into a blog post and I'm just going to publish it. And I published it, and it felt like it was almost therapeutic. I was terrified, but it was almost therapeutic. And then because it's like releasing your deepest, darkest secrets and your fears and your shame, because you feel shame when you feel depressed, especially when you feel you're not worthy of depression. Wow. And I remember sharing this, and then the response we got was just, it went viral. It basically went viral. All my friends shared it, all my family shared it. I had people from my family, I had friends getting in touch, telling me things that they'd never told me before, opening up about things that I never knew that they had felt, from people who I thought were just strong people and would never have felt the same way that I'd felt. I had people from all over the world via Instagram sending me a DM, opening up about how they felt. I've never experienced anything like that. And I thought, it was at that moment, it made me feel better. It was therapeutic sharing it, and then it was therapeutic people sharing their experiences back. And it was from that moment I thought, you know what, I've got something here. I can turn my pain into a pleasure, or I can share my pain and it'll make other people feel better.
Beautiful.
So I really understand.
I love that reciprocity, that giving and receiving, and that
invitation
for others to share in that way. And I think that really courageous opening and sharing and getting in touch with the rawness of our own emotions, that's allowing other people to know that they can do the same.
As you say, you said the word normalize it. That's the most important thing, because it is a normal emotion.
And that's the thing, growing up in southern England, it was like, children should be seen and not heard, which is the first one. So we're already trained to keep our mouths shut and not share, like, emotions, thoughts, feelings. And then, beyond that as well, getting into the spaces like the British stiff upper lip, it was like considered to be good to be able to suppress and repress emotion. Even
now, I think a large part of the UK especially, that's still the attitude.
Keep calm and carry on.
Exactly.
It's like, fuck, you gotta be kidding me. Like, when you look at when that was coming about, like, people had to repress panic for being bombed, like during those times, right, the Second World War. And that creates an imprinting culturally where, the UK especially, like, this idea that you just, it's just not a big deal. It's not, it could have, and that's how to invalidate someone's traumatic experience. When someone's going through something, no matter how big or small it seems to us, it's suffering. And we need to validate that. If you're getting systematically bombed every night, it changes your lens of what normal is. You just get used to suffering, and it gets hardwired into your system. And that is not a way to live.
No.
And that's what I think, we're all waking up to. Like, hang on, there's another way. I don't have to feel this shit.
I think that our generation, we're, by sharing these thoughts and emotions, it's healthy. It's really healthy, because I look at the generation above me where there has been issues, and it's no way. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. You should be comfortable to be able to speak about how you feel, regardless of how you feel.
And then there's a piece there for me about having the awareness to know how we're feeling, and then having the skill set and language to be able to speak to that, and then having someone else being able to receive that without needing to take responsibility for it. So it's like, I'm responsible for my own words, actions, and emotions, and so are you. And I can hold space for you to just share those to me and receive it fully without needing to fix or change you. It's okay for you to have your experience, and I can sit. And now, part of what I do is I sit with people in their darkest discomfort and their most horrendous pain, and I invite them to feel it again. Like, and so like if I'm dealing with like a near drowning or supporting someone through a sexual assault, they'll relive that emotional quality, and I'll sit next to them and remain essentially calm and in my own rhythm of breath, so that they can feel that and tether to it, and they can relive that shit.
Wow.
And so that's, you know, what we're doing is, we're normalizing it, we're making it acceptable to feel everything, and in doing so, we're freeing ourselves from holding on to that anymore.
That's powerful, man. That's very powerful. Let's just go back. Let's talk a wee bit more about like the mental and physical health connection.
Yeah.
My example that I would use is just because it's one I'm familiar with, is like when you have an anxiety attack and your body goes into like fight or flight mode. Yeah. Can you explain in your own words, like what is happening in that moment, and what would be the best way to combat an anxiety attack, that fight or flight mode?
Sure, thank you. So you touched on like the connection between like mental, physical, or body, mind. Mm-hmm. And for me, like it's really, I enjoy like going through this idea that the body and mind are actually one. So it's like there's no separation. And so there's a couple of different ways to view this. It's like the brain is in the body, and the mind is in every single cell. So when we think about it, like that's how I kind of like to think about it, because the mind is also in the large intestine, as an example, creating serotonin. So it's like conceptualizing that idea that the mind is in the head is, I think, part of the problem that we have in the West, because the mind, consciousness, is in every single cell.
Well, can I just say this is the first time I've ever heard this, but it makes 100% sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it's because like I don't live here, I live here.
Yeah.
I live in every single cell of this body, but if I associate only with my brain, I'm not associating with the rest of my body. And so it's like this neck up approach to health. So like that, the first thing is like this idea of like, this is some of the teachings of BMC, of body mind centering. This is the work of Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, and it's about embodiment. So it's about us recognizing that I am my stomach as well as my brain. So then I can actually like live from my pelvis. And I think, so anyway, that's like one idea. And then the other idea I like to seed in, which is kind of fun, is the idea of the medicine wheel, which is, I've spent a lot of time sitting in circle and ceremony and sweat lodge with Canadians, with the native elders. And they carry these amazing wisdom traditions. These are the first peoples of Canada, and they've been on that land, you know, since time immemorial. And one of the theories is that they came in through Alaska, and they were the people that traveled down through North America, and that they stopped in Canada because they didn't need to leave. And so these people were like, we found paradise. And so I've been honored to learn from these people, and I've learned a variety of their teachings, including some of their great mystical traditions and some of their medicine ceremonies. And what I love is this idea of the 4 directions. And so they teach from this place of the 4 directions, which is a medicine wheel, and it's the idea of body, mind, emotions, and spirit. So they break the human, the being, up into 4. So they say that we're a physical body with a mind that is capable of perception, sensing, and then also the feeling, the emotional quality that's moving through us, which would be the endocrine system, the glands. And then the spirit, they define this as the observer. So the spirit is the observer of all of those 3. So we can observe the body, we can feel the body, and we can have a perception of that, and we can witness thoughts. And because we're witnessing the thoughts, we're feeling the emotions, and we're sensing the body, we are the witness. So that moves us into the space of this highest self. Yeah. So that for me like really clearly defines spirituality. Okay. But at the same time, I'm not saying I'm just this, I'm saying I'm also this physical form. Yeah. So then it's just like I am all 4 of those. And in the Canadian tradition, health would be defined as the balance of those 4. So for me, it's about where do we overaccumulate? So when I look at someone that's maybe a CrossFit athlete, they have a tendency to be really strong in the body, but where are they not connected? Yeah. And for me, when I had, when I was unwell, I was not balanced within myself. It was because I was so in my head, so in my brain, in this whirring, that I wasn't actually in my body. Right. And I wasn't connected to emotions, and I had no concept of what spirituality was, for me defining that as my relationship to all things.
Okay, do you think so this is all linked to like maybe an anxiety attack by being unaware of these things? Or?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, anxiety is a lack of capacity to emotionally regulate, and maybe just a disconnect between the systems of body, mind, emotion, spirit. Okay. And maybe an overaccumulation in one of those, that's essentially overaccumulation emotionally, and a lack of awareness physically, mentally, and spiritually. Anxiety being defined for me as like this pressure in the third energy center, which is our solar plexus. It's the space of our personal power, and it also, the thymus gland is right here, which controls the rhythm of breathing. I find that most people with anxiety have a stuckness in their rib cage. Right. And so invariably the diaphragm muscle is stuck. So like people are going like, I've got anxiety, and the doctors are prescribing them an antidepressant, which is going to numb that. It's like, great, I've got a problem here, let's numb it. It's like, well, fuck, we haven't really got to the root cause of it. So for me, when I look at someone that come to me and they say, I've got anxiety, it's like, okay, cool, let's look at your breathing. And as soon as we read their breath pattern, that pattern shows up again. They're not activating the rib cage.
So it's a consistent pattern that you see in anxiety all the time?
Almost like 95% of the clients that come in and lie on the table, I read the breath and it's the same. There it is, stuckness in the third energy center. And potentially holding in the throat. So like if someone's going to have a panic attack, they're not letting go of their exhale every time. So it looks like this.
Just constant inhale.
And they won't let go of their exhale, and then it's like and then they'll gasp. And they get stuck in this until it comes faster and faster. So the gasp reflex feeds into a big oxygenation. Then they hold onto the carbon dioxide, create an imbalance in their bloodstream, which leads to a tension in the nervous system, which leads to another gasp reflex.
Right.
And so it's all right there. And so like we can literally read breath. And so I can lie someone on the table, get them to link their breath up, and then I can read their breath and I can see where they breathe and don't breathe. With women, I can see if they've had challenge in childbirth or a sexual assault. They don't breathe into the pelvis. Right. If someone has a lot of control in their life, they're going to hold their throat. If someone's not breathing through into their heart, they're either holding on to grief or heartbreak. So we can read those patterns in breath.
That's fascinating. So what would you say in terms? So if I was to just have an anxiety attack right now, what would be the best way to combat that in that moment? Is there like one specific way or?
Yeah, so if you were to do that in this moment right now, like my response would probably vary depending on the severity. Right. The essence is to enable you to self-soothe. So the essence is to enable you to sit and be with it and actually guide yourself out of it.
So just being aware of it.
Firstly, like the first thing that I would probably do that you kind of already touched upon in an earlier story you shared is around this facial recognition. Mm-hmm. So you know that when you respond with panic, someone else is going to panic. Yeah. So the first thing I'd do is if you dropped into an anxiety attack is I'd maintain this expression of calm. So the first thing I'm going to do is regulate myself. Right. So if I connect to my own breath and stay calm, you can attune to me.
And then I mirror it.
Yeah. And so that's the first piece I'm going to do. The next piece is subtly, your nervous system can sense me. So this is the idea of anchoring. If I start going into a high tone of panic and start smiling and being jovial and really excited, most people are going to come up with me. Mm-hmm. And similarly, if I start to slow down and calm down and soften my voice and slow down the space of my speech and start to slow, everyone's starting to get fucking bored with mine. So there's a quality of, when we start to raise our own levels of awareness, we can start to actually bring people with us. Mm-hmm. So like if you're starting to get anxious, the first thing I'm going to do is stay calm. I probably wouldn't react, and I'd just start using your name, speaking directly to you. I'd look at your responses and see where you're at, and then I'm going to start to decide what my next actions are going to be. It may be that I just coach you through it from right here, that's going to be enough. And then in that moment, you're self-resourcing. So the first thing I would invariably do is bring your awareness to your breath. Yeah. I would watch your breath and I become aware of how it's moving and where. Where are you holding and where is the tension? And I'd invite you to become aware of that and then release it.
So awareness of the breath is fundamentally the best way to deal with an anxiety attack.
Yeah, and then staying in the space of the witness. An anxiety attack is invariably a panic response that wants to be felt again to get completed. Okay. So sometimes I'll guide someone into it even deeper and then out the other side. Right. Because it might be that they need to relive it in its fullness. And so invariably breathwork, what we're doing is we're actually triggering unprocessed emotional responses. Right. We're prodding people into something that they may have to relive. So I touched upon it, but my avalanche as an example, I actually relived that whole experience. So it was about 4 weeks after the avalanche, I went to see a nervous system specialist, and they guided me through my whole experience again, and I relived it. I relived the breath, the movement, everything. I went to a blind panic, I sweated through my shirt. It was quite something. And subsequently, since then, I've noticed that if I guide people in certain breath rhythms, it starts to bring up old traumas that they may remember. I guided someone through a near drowning. That was probably one of the most vigorous experiences I've ever supported. And since then, I've guided, and it's tragic to say, but hundreds of women through reliving sexual assault and getting complete on it.
Right.
And by complete, what we're doing is we're bringing it out of the body in the lower brainstem, and we're bringing it up into the midbrain that remembers time. So when we have a big experience and we don't ever complete it, we don't go through a natural cycle of reliving it, we think it's still running. So with women, they if they have a sexual assault and they never get to a space of safety, they can't actually bring it out of their subconscious. They've compressed it down because it's such a foul experience, they don't actually want to know that it's happened. So there's a splitting or a separation that occurs, and the same with any men with sexual assault as well.
Yeah.
And so when they start to breathe into the areas that haven't received breath because they don't want to breathe or feel that space, they start to re-embody, and it starts to bring up those unconscious memories. And so then they start to process those out, and then their breath pattern changes. They can suddenly feel their hips again.
You feel like breathwork's one of the best ways to combat previous traumas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for your listeners, disclaimer, there's a lot of research into psychedelic assisted therapy going on right now.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's anything that's come across your podcast
Not yet,
or anything else. So, I obviously can only speak from the clinical research that I've read about. And so there's a lot of research, and I've devoted a lot of my time to healing trauma, as I kind of mentioned, to be able to ultimately live again, and live with joy and ease and grace in my own life. And so I've gone down all of these different paths to explore what healing looks like in different cultures. And part of that's led me to the realm of plant medicines and psychedelic assisted therapy. And there's a lot of really beautiful research that's going on all over the world right now. Amsterdam's doing a lot of psilocybin assisted therapy. There's an MDMA trial in Canada right now, in UBC in Vancouver. And so, there's an exploration into how essentially when we create an altered state of consciousness, we can resurface all unprocessed emotion and traumatic material experiences, and emotion that's actually still stored in our cells and tissues, and a pattern that's still stored, and we can bring it to the surface, relive it, feel it all, and then complete it. And so that's there's a huge flood of research on the market right now that's quite fascinating as to how we can use something like psilocybin in a safe, contained way with adequate support to bring up those experiences and then complete them. And of course, I could never endorse any of those because they're mostly illegal all over the world. And
you can say whatever you want in this podcast.
I guess we're in bar. I don't know. We're in bar.
It's all on you. Yeah. Listen, I don't care. So you can say what you want.
And so my journey's been a winding one. But the essence of it is what I found was that I could get the same results through breathwork.
Right.
And what I found is that breathwork can create the same altered states of consciousness as psychedelics. So what that means is I can get high from breathing. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I can actually get as high as quite a lot of different substances
just by breathing.
So I can spend 1 hour with a really nice soundtrack of music, and I can guide my breath in such a way that I'm eliciting a response from my glands that will actually change my state of consciousness. So specifically, I can access the pituitary and the pineal gland, and that's going to make me epically high. Mm-hmm. And so that was part of the reason why, I created this level of self-awareness and this capacity to change my own blood chemistry. And that was like a revolution, because I was just like, okay, if I want to elicit these chemicals, I don't know if you've ever had it, where you're standing in the middle of the most epic drum embrace or rock concert. You're surrounded by 500 people and you're just loving it. Yeah. And you've got tingles running through your whole body. I can elicit that response in 8 minutes. And so then and I can do that textbook, and I've discovered the breath pattern to do that. And then the same with DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca and some other interesting substances. With my team in Canada and myself, we've elicited the breath response that releases DMT. So we know how to create that ourselves without taking a substance, just by changing the rhythm of breath. So yeah, in that moment, we're basically changing blood chemistry, but we're also changing how we can access our subconscious. Right. So we can surface this old traumatic material and feel it and relive it, and then let it go, essentially. And by letting it go, I actually mean process it out and make sense of the story.
Is that why you've only got 2 beers in the fridge then?
Yeah,
just because all you need is...
I don't need to.
You just need breath to get high.
Yeah. And they've been there for like months. I've just been waiting for you to come over.
That's a cheap night out.
A good excuse. Yeah, I mean, like, segue my relationship with alcohol, as I mentioned, I went cold turkey for about a year, and that was really important for me to just get to the depth of my dependence on that substance. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of had this like wavering relationship, and what I came to realize is it's like sex. Like I took a vow of celibacy for some time, and by celibacy I mean like nothing. Like nothing, I mean like the Taoist teachings of sexual kung fu. So there's a great teacher, Mantak Chia, and he talks about how to move sexual energy for men and women, and he speaks a lot about men. And I've got a great teacher. Shout out to Will Blunderfield, who's like a dear friend of mine in Canada. And Will's this amazing human who teaches men naked yoga and sexual kung fu. And so this is all about how to move sexual energy, how to maintain an erection, how to have semen retention. Yeah. And he's like, it's just like, the way he does it is just like so fucking out there, it's epic. And so anyway, I went through this process of just exploring like how reliant I was on ejaculation to regulate my own system. And it was just like, wow, like it was amazing to see how much I was addicted to. Yeah. And then like that time in Portugal, like when I was off grid on my own, it was just like, wow, like there's no opportunity to get laid here. I'm just, I'm really gonna have to just be with myself.
Yeah, me, myself, and I.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, wow, that's another whole interesting exploration. So like pretty fascinating to just get into all of these ways that we can move energy through our body and do it in a good way and just explore that relationship with self.
Blunderfield and Dangerfield. That's quite a dynamic duo.
And we've led workshops and trainings and retreats together, and it's super funny. And it is that.
I'd like to see the posters for that Blunderfield and Dangerfield.
Yeah. I'll send you one.
You should send me one.
From somewhere with him, he's a rad, just a rad.
He sounds like an intriguing fella.
Yeah, he really is.
At what point did you, doing all the self-medication, at what point did it become something that you actively wanted to use it to help others? Was there a defining point, or was it just something like a natural progression?
Yeah, it was a pretty steady and gradual approach, and I was really mindful to do it like for the right reasons. Yeah. But it was more like, oh shit, like there's something here.
You want to share it?
Yeah, it started out with like, I started out actually training in what's called biofield energy healing, which is just working with hands-on and hands slightly off. So one of the modalities that most people may have heard of is called Reiki. And Reiki works on the premise that here's the thing, it's my left brain logical coming through. Like everyone talks about like the spiritual woo-woo, and I'm just like, I'm too logical. I want to know why. I'm like, okay, so you're waving your hand over me, and I can feel it's creating a change in me, but why? And so we got into this. Firstly, started to understand is there's the highest concentration of nerve endings in the palm of the hand than anywhere else in the human body. And the nerve endings, when we focus on them, we can actually, like Qigong is the practice of Qi, of cultivating Qi. And when we start to move our hands together and apart, we can actually start to feel that there's a magnetism.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Yeah. And so if you keep doing that, you actually start to cultivate that magnetism where you can actually get used to it. So all of the listeners at home can start to move their palms together and apart.
This is why I wanted a visual podcast.
Yeah, totally. I don't have to describe it.
There you go.
Yeah. And so this is the cultivation of Qi, and then we can start to move it like in a ball as well, and you can start to feel how you can actually start to create, and then you can start to move it. And just get used to it. Now you're in like Street Fighter or whatever, right? And so it's coming out of China, and that's the reason for it. We start to cultivate Qi. Yeah. So then we take that premise and we start to like place our hands over someone's body, knowing that the hands are electromagnets, like technically are electromagnets. Yeah. And with consciousness, we can learn how to change the field, the electromagnetic field. Okay, so we can measure that now. We can put a device up in our palm, and we can get someone who's an experienced meditator, and they can change the quality and tone of that electromagnetic resonance from their hand. So that's what we're training in Reiki. Now we have Western science, we know why. So before it was just mysticism. People would wave their hands over and they create a change in the field. But now we can actually start to measure that, and we can actually start to train how to change the magnetic resonance.
Yeah.
So now we've got something that's measurable, and we can start to like move the hands over the body, where we can start to sense shifts in the field, and we can start to move the energy around, and we're creating neurofeedback. So the nervous system has nerve endings all over the body. When we hold an electromagnet over it, we're going to create change. So then a human working with a human can do that. So I started in that modality, and it's super subtle. Like we're holding our hand up to like 60 centimeters off someone's body, and we're feeling the vibrational magnetic resonance that's being emitted from their nervous system. So this is like a real nervous system technology. And yeah, it just...
So it's a gradual process then, it's kind of started
yeah.
and then...
And I started learning from a lady who was my mentor, and she started to teach me. And just every week we would connect, and I would receive a treatment from her, and then we would talk and discuss, and then I would start to practice on her. And then it kind of flowed like that, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I started practicing on friends, and I started seeing results, and I was like, this is cool. And then that was just gradual. I didn't accept money at that time. I didn't have the skill set or experience, and it was just more of a practice, and it was more of a curiosity, and it was a really deep learning.
Yeah.
So I was like, the first 2 years of practice was all about like study and exchange, and I worked with some people over time, and we saw really cool results. And there was something missing. And it wasn't until that I went to that breathwork class, and that I'd studied the nervous system, I studied trauma healing, I'd studied the work of like Peter Levine and somatic experiencing, and like just reading up and working with different healers, Chinese massage, Chinese medicine, yogic philosophy, tantric philosophy. So I'd had all of these different spokes, and then bam, here was the hub.
Yeah.
And the hub was breathwork. And suddenly it linked all of them together. And it was just like, wow, it all makes sense now. And so when I discovered the rhythm of breath and how to move it in the human, it made everything come together, and it had cohesion. And so then I was just like, all of this is great and useful, but breath is the key for me. That's like, and then it was just this fascinating exploration. I just like delved into it, and then I just started spending an hour and a half a night meditating on my own breath. And exploring different rhythms, and then starting to pattern it.
Okay. And then, so you went from the gradual build-up to what I now see. I've done my research on you before I came, as always, just so I know who I'm talking to. So I've got some things to talk about, No, but after checking out your website, which is called breathworkbali.com, there's a wee plug for you.
Thank you, bro.
One of many we'll give you.
Yeah.
After checking out your website, so you obviously went from, it started off a self-medication, then you gradually started to practice on others. Now you've got this incredible business that goes under the umbrella of breathworkbali.com. I noticed you actually have 3 different things on offer when it comes to anyone who wants to experience you and what you do. And the first one is the clinic, which consists of one-to-one sessions with you. So what exactly do these entail?
Yeah, thank you.
And as you do that, I'm just going to plug in the camera because I think it's run out of battery, so I'll let you talk.
Okay, sounds good, bro. So in clinic, a one-on-one session varies depending on how long someone's going to book in with me for. But normally it starts where they'll come in, and we'll start by just talking through like do they have any breathwork experience, and what their intention is for the session, what it is that I can help support them with. And then we'll sort of, depending on how much time we have, I need to make some judgment calls on how much time we're going to spend talking and how much time we're going to spend breathing. Invariably, breathwork's more potent than talk therapy with me, because we're getting to the underlying cause of the emotional qualities that are creating issues and dysregulation. So invariably, it looks like this. We'll talk for a bit. I'll invite the client to lie on the table. So we have like a massage table set up. And then I'll guide them in a meditation of breathwork for, however long the session might be. And then we'll talk again at the end to make sense of it.
Okay.
So that's in short form, that's the session.
That's your one-on-one sessions.
Yeah. And when someone's in a breathwork journey, it can look like basically anything. So it can be like, we can talk about it, and they can be really specific. They can be like, I fell off my scooter 4 weeks ago. I banged my ankle. I've been to the physio. They can't help me. It's seized up, and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. So, there's a holding pattern in the ankle, in the nervous system, the body's creating tension. It won't release it because it still thinks it's under threat. So we'll drop someone into a guided breath, we'll change the blood chemistry, we'll take the DMN, the default mode network, offline. So that's the area of the brain where we normally think and we normally process. Basically, we're dropping their guard, we're making them super malleable, and then I'll repattern the ankle and the leg so that it knows it's safe. And then we'll bring them gently out of it, and then they'll find that they're able to move again. So that would be like a session. So that's like one example. Okay. Or we can have someone come in and say like, I just realized it's just surfaced with me that I was sexually abused as a child.
Right.
And I can feel it in my body, and I want some help and support unpacking that. And I'll be like, okay, great. So this is now going to be a therapeutic relationship, and we're going to work with each other, over the course of weeks. And a lot of it here in Bali, Jamie, is all about like, how long do I have to work with this person? How long are they here for? And then just how do I best serve them? So it might be that someone's here on vacation and they're gonna have like I'm gonna have like a 2-hour session with them. So I'm like, okay, like I have to as a practitioner of breathwork, I've got 2 hours with someone. I need to make a real assessment on their level of support that they have after this. So it's like, who are you traveling with? Where are you staying? What do you do for work? Where do you live? What's your relationship like with your family? Any close friends with you here?
That's a lot in 2 hours.
Yeah, so right there I need to make an assessment. How stable is this person?
Yeah.
But beyond that, also like what are the support and resources they have after this session? Because breathwork's like, as we kind of established the most powerful tool for trauma surfacing and recovery. And so I want to know that like, is this a one-off, or is this something that is this a journey and a path they're continuing on? And it might be that I live here, I'm a CEO of a corporation, I'm really well financed, I'm living well, but I have this major issue and no one's been able to help me with it. And I'm like, cool, you're in the right place. Because breathwork's going to the root cause of whatever problem it is. That's someone I'm probably going to work with over a series of weeks, and we're going to go really deep. Like, I love working with people that have hit a wall and hit a barrier. They've been like, I've done everything, and I'm like, you haven't done this. And it's like, we can alter your blood chemistry with breathing. Yeah. We're going to get you high. You have not done this. And so like, and I also love working with people that are total like skeptics. They're like, oh, it's just breathing. And I'm like, those are often the ones that have the biggest experience. Because like, it's just breathing.
Yeah.
And then
so you enjoy that challenge then?
Yeah, I enjoy that like miracle. Because it's a miracle that their perception shifts. Yeah. Because invariably what happens is they're like, I did that. It's like they realize that that's their power. Yeah.
It's like someone saying, I don't believe in hypnotism, and they get up on stage and next minute they're doing funny dances. And
totally, bro. Well, there's a great parallel there, because we are working with a certain style or quality of hypnosis as well. They're self-hypnotizing with the breath. Yeah. But I love like people that and I love working with men as well, like type A men who are like, we kind of touched upon it, but this whole stigma around like going to a counselor or going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or any of those modalities, like I still think for most of us men, like for me it was a challenge to reach out to someone. And so I'm a man who's doing breath work, who's focusing on lung capacity. So if I frame it like that, guys can come and see me. They're like, I'm an athlete. I want to come in and increase my lung capacity. And we keep that rapport going on until they lie on the table and then they start to bawl their eyes out. And it's just like, awesome, great. Thank you for releasing this emotion, because this is what's been causing your dysregulation of your system, this idea that you can't actually express. And then, it's a safe space. There's, total confidentiality. And they feel, then they just come back because, they're working on their breathing as opposed to working on, and this is the great thing about breathwork, is we don't have to tell a story. We just need to remove the emotion. Yeah.
Well, they sound, the one-to-one, the sessions, they sound very powerful. Very powerful. But I go into the second offering which you have on your website, your very lovely website, and it goes under the guise of training, which I assume is you're actually teaching people how to become breathwork teachers themselves.
Yeah, thank you. So it came about, it was one of those really beautiful cases where I started having a lot of clients that wanted to know more. And this is when I was back in Canada 2 years ago. And they started to be like, I want to know more about this. What are you doing? How's this working? And their thirst for knowledge and information and their desire to even dive deeper started me on a path of wanting to share these more. And so coming back to Robin Clements, Robin, he became a dear friend of mine, and we started to actually teach. He invited me to support him in his teachings, and so I started to show up and watch him and learn from him directly, and I continued in that way, and I continued learning and supporting from him. And so last year I had the honor of teaching basically one of his entry-level modules to a group of people, and we then took those people to one of his next levels of training. And then once they'd completed that, I made a decision that I wanted them to learn more of the science and more of the sort of the depth of the trauma awareness that I had. So I took a group of students then through a more in-depth program, and I started training them in how to recognize the signs of trauma and how that moved through the body and how to get complete on that. So right now in Canada, there's about 12 practitioners that I've trained that are working. And part of that was like a legacy piece. Like it was like I had this really shitty experience of, you know, avalanche, alcoholism, anxiety, depression, near suicide, and then this huge awakening to the truth of who I am and what I am. And then I was just like, I had all these amazing clients in Canada, and I decided to move to Bali, and I'm like, oh shit, like I want someone to support them. And so the best thing to do was I had these clients who were coming through, were really inquisitive and brilliant. I was like, okay, well, I could train them. And so I decided to hand over the teachings in the best way that I could. And so I moved over here in October, and in September with my friend Jen Field, her and I, we co-hosted this retreat training, and we trained these practitioners with, we basically gifted them everything that we knew in like a very condensed experience. Yeah. And so that's the training, and that's now evolved. Jen actually, she flew here with another friend of ours, Carmen. So Jen, Carmen, and I, we've actually started a school. We have created our own school with our own curriculum for breathwork.
That's so cool, man.
And it's trauma-sensitive clinical breathwork. So what we're doing is we're taking what we know to be true about the neuroscience, the endocrine system, and Western science, all of what we know about trauma awareness, and we're packaging that up with breathwork, and then we're training people. So the school is called Vayu, V-A-Y-U, Vayu, and it represents the word wind in the yogic traditions. And so what we're doing is we're training people to understand the inner rhythms of the wind, the breath that's moving within us. And so what we've done is we built a curriculum. It's 400 hours, so it's one of the longest and in-depth breathwork trainings in the world. Yeah, and it is unique in as much as, well, it's unique that I'm teaching it, but it's unique that it's trauma sensitive. Yeah. So we're really bringing this lens of really understanding, you know, the trauma from the Western lens. And yeah, right now we've made a mandate to train 14 practitioners only per year. So that's so that we can.
It's all about quality, not just like pumping people through to try and make. Not like it's not money making. It's all about the quality, making sure people are doing the right things.
Totally. So here's the thing: like we talked about clinic. Well, my clinic's fully booked. Yeah. And like I'm really abundant. I'm really super supported. And so it's about, for me, like it's all of the motivation of this is like these teachings are really powerful.
This is your legacy, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. How do I give them to people and offer them to people in the best way that I can and in the safest way that I can? Because it's irresponsible of me to teach someone this technique without all of the parts that go around it for support, for understanding the why and making sure people are complete and safe in it. So that's kind of like, we've made a mandate to keep the training small, intimate, to have this group that comes through that starts to interconnect with each other, so that when they come out and they're qualified, they actually support each other. And so it is a totally different paradigm. It's like a circular paradigm, it's not a pyramid. And then once they're trained, we work alongside them. So we mentor them like consistently through that program. And then the aim is that they then become junior facilitators and they start to help train with us. So the first wave that we're bringing through in 2020 will become our junior facilitators. Yeah. And then as the years go on, they'll become our senior facilitators. And our prayer is that we can steadily and organically grow the school and continue to share these teachings with, you know, people who are really following this way. So that's...
You must be really excited with that.
It is super exciting, and you know, it's amazing, Jamie, because before I would have been like, let's grow and expand, and now I'm like, 14 a year, let's take it slow.
Organic.
Yeah, and steady, and it's just like, I've I've lost that need to rush.
It's almost like you're reliving your restaurant days, but with a new mindset of living in the woods in Portugal and stepping in front of a bus and all these kind of things, you know?
Yeah, it's the middle way.
Yeah.
So, you know, what I notice is the inhale, which is expansion, yang, do, let's go, fire, and the exhale, which is the feminine, relax, soften, chill. Those are in balance in my life now. Because they're in balance in my own breathing, they're in balance in life. So how I'm growing this business is also how I'm living. It's like with clear intention, love, passion, and integrity, and purpose, and at the same time this deep sense of trust and flow that like, it's already done. Yeah. Like I know we've already built the school. I can visualize it and see it very much like us sitting here with the podcast.
Yeah.
You know it's going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then when you do, you relax into it. You send me a message on Instagram. It's like, yeah, sure, come on over, have a beer, and let's chat.
Yeah.
And I love that way now.
Yeah.
That's how things manifest organically, as opposed to like pushing or forcing.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Well, I'm very excited for you, man. I wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be checking in on the progress, and you'll need to keep me updated.
Yeah, for sure.
That'll be cool. Maybe we'll get the second part to this, maybe at your new place, and
totally,
like a follow-up series.
Yeah, it'd be super fun. Yeah,
that would be really cool.
What's shifted and changed.
That'd be really cool.
Be wild.
But the third offering I noticed you had was workshop as well.
Yes.
Which I assume you hold here in Bali.
Yeah.
So what is involved in the workshops, and what should people expect to gain from them?
Yeah, thank you. We just did one last night. So invariably every Wednesday that I'm in Bali, I run a workshop. And I work, currently I'm working out of a space called Zin. Zin is where we actually
That's where I first met you, yeah.
So just next to that room that we were in, there's now a beautiful fitness space. Okay. So it's a wide open room, and it's got a soft padded floor. And so I rent that space for 3 hours, and I do a 3-hour breathwork offering and journey on a Wednesday night, 6:30 till 9:30. And so I teach in the Canadian native way, which is in circle. So instead of me being at the front and everybody looking at me, I sit in a circle in the recognition that I am equal to everyone. So this is this idea that everybody has a voice and we share.
Yeah.
So whilst I'm bringing through offerings and teaching, someone else can also share, and everybody's voice is important. So I love this way of circle and ceremony, and it's the way of counsel. Yeah. And you know, just a slight segue, when we think about like how we lead our countries in the West, our political system is set up of like one opinion and the other opinion, and they fight, and they don't get anything done. And the native Canadian way is to sit in circle and to hear everybody, and that everybody has an equal voice. And so it's a different way of navigating and communicating and making decisions for the whole, where everybody's needs are met. So anyway, my workshops, we sit in circle, and the format is 3 hours. The format looks a bit like, I get everyone to walk around first. So we orientate into the room and the space, and we orientate to each other, and that kind of breaks the ice. And then we sit down, and I actually then describe the format, because some people really need to know. Yeah. Some people have this like thirst of like, I need to feel safe, and how is this going to look for me? So it's like, okay, well, this is a 3-hour workshop. I'm going to define why breath work is important, how we breathe, the mechanics of breathing, how it impacts the body. I then describe the technique. I then invite someone up to demonstrate the technique on them so we can all see it in real time. Then we take a bathroom break. Then everyone comes back in. We do a Q&A. We share an intention. And then they lie down, and I guide them on a breathwork journey for about an hour and a quarter to an hour and a half. So they're like breathing rhythmically for an hour and a half, which is just this wild journey that looks basically like a bell curve. So we start slow, and then things start to get like a little bit exciting, and then we get up to this peak of intensity. There can be vibration and tingling and all sorts of magical sensations. And then we kind of wind down the other end and move into relaxation. And then there's a good like 30 minutes of like deep rest and relaxation to integrate all of this. So
it's almost like a gym class where you do the warm-up,
you
get into the intensity, and then you do the cool-down.
Totally. Yeah. And for the nervous system, that's really important, right? Yeah. So we need activation, we need stimulus. It's the same as a yoga class as well. It's the same way it's designed. And then you have like a deep shavasana at the end. That allows it all to set into the body and relax. And at the end, we all share. So we go around in the circle, and each person shares their experience. And it's just like, you know, people will be like, yeah, you know, it was just like, I just cried. I cried for an hour, and I haven't cried in like 6 years, and I just really needed to cry, and that was amazing, and wow, I feel so much lighter. And some people are like, oh, I was visited by the spirit of my grandmother, and she told me that everything's going to be okay, and that I can let go, and that I'm supported by her, and she's watched over me. And I'm like, what people share is amazing, and that's valid and real in their experience.
Yeah.
And some people, they're visited by like spirits from outer space, and I'm like, hey, sure, if that was your experience, I totally believe you. That's not ever something I've ever experienced, but that might be yours, and that's cool. And then some people are just having these amazing physical experiences where like they're having abject pain and they're moving through that, and then some people are doing like all sorts of contortions and twists and movements, and they're adjusting their spine, and it's just, and I'm standing in the middle of it watching it all and supporting people. And so last night there were 4 of us on the team facilitating. We had 16 people breathing. That's the ratio that I like to breathe to.
1 to 4.
So 1 to 4. And that feels really safe for me.
Yeah.
And there's a quality of breathing in a group where people support each other. One person crying is really triggering another person over here, who's then bringing up that emotion, and that brings up like them when they were young, they heard their brother crying and there's nothing they could do about it, and it brings up all their emotions, and they start to cry, and then someone over here starts to make a big oming noise, and it's just beautiful, like to see this amazing wisdom that is coming through the circle, and how we heal together in a group in that way. And then after the sharing, we just do a little Q&A. I tell people how they can best support themselves, and then any future events that we've got coming up, and we're building a community. I'm seeing the same faces week on week, and that's super cool.
And they'll be telling their friends, and they'll be telling their friends.
And then those people are the people that want to train here in Bali.
Yeah.
And so then that's the next step, is going to be running trainings, potentially running trainings here in Bali.
Yeah.
For me, I want to train people who come here and show up, and who I develop a rapport and relationship with. I have a sense of responsibility to guide them.
They're a reflection of you.
Thank you. Yeah, and if they're going to say they've trained with me, I want them to carry these teachings in a good way.
Yeah.
So if someone's going to use my name and say they've trained in my school, I need to be sure that they're operating responsibly and with integrity. And so that's this idea of giving blessing in that way.
Yeah.
And also like seeing that people are ready. Like I really want to support people in moving into it. Like some people are fired up for this. And it's okay.
I can imagine.
Let's do this.
But imagine your workshops are like the perfect way for anyone who just wants an introduction to it, or a bite-sized version of it, or if anyone's skeptical of it, it's a great way to come along and make an informed judgment. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the piece around it. It's like, here's the thing, like like business marketing, like it's all about the funnel, right? So it's like, we have Facebook and Instagram ads. Then we have the circle, which is like $50. Like people, if they're curious and interested, they're going to spend $50. They're going to come along. It's 3 hours. It's just like, it's low risk. After that, they're going to sign up for a retreat, and after that, they're going to become a practitioner.
Yeah.
And it's just like the most amazing business model, and it's just like super steady, and it feels great. And we're helping support people to heal, all sorts of emotional dysregulation, trauma, and anxiety in a really good way, breath free. Like once you learn the technique, you've learned it for life.
Yeah. I
mean, it's just like, ultimately to become a practitioner is like a total 1 year, 400 hours, very inexpensive for the skill level that you have and what you can then practice in clinic, and the rate of return's epic.
And you can adapt it to your everyday life yourself. It's personal skills and business skills.
Even if you want to open a restaurant, if I had breathwork when I was a restaurant owner, I wouldn't have burnt out.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the skill set. And so I see, like, for entrepreneurs, CEOs, anyone that's like wanting to be a creative, having at least the fundamentals of breathwork is an amazing gift you give yourself.
Interesting. So you don't necessarily need to take your teacher training or anything like that just to be a breathwork coach. You could do it if you want to be, as you say, a restaurant owner or an athlete or anything. You can apply it to absolutely anything.
Yeah, and I've worked with professional skiers and mountain bikers when I was living in Whistler in BC in Canada. It's a big ski and mountain bike resort, and I've worked with professional athletes simply to improve nerve responses and function, subconscious programming and lung capacity, and rates of rest and recovery and resilience in the nervous system. And then I love working with like CEOs, creatives, entrepreneurs, those guys who have got blocks in business. They can't solve the problem with more thought. They need to transcend their vibrational frequency and their own personal level of consciousness to be able to create the solution. And the way that they do that is by altering their brain state, by altering their blood chemistry, by changing their breathing. So they go into these epic states where the DMN, the default mode network, is taken offline, which is the same as doing psychedelics. So the brain has shifted and changed in such a way that they can get totally high, and in that moment they get clarity. And then they come out of it and they write down all of their business ideas, and they've solved like a year's worth of problems. and it's epic to witness. And then there's so much value and buy-in for them.
Yeah, of course. Must be, and very fulfilling for you as well.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, that's the piece as well. I think, you know, like, sure, I can say like I'm trying to help support the world, but I'm really not. Like, it's just all about me. Like, you know?
I knew it. I knew it.
I just want to go into work and just feel like that level of stoke and that level of joy, and then, you know,
your work should be fulfilling in some way, shape, or form. It's what
right?
it's where you spend the majority of your life.
Yeah, and so like, this idea that we do something that sucks, or that we're doing it because we should, or to pay the bills, it's just like, that doesn't work for me. And so I also, as you can see from my house, like I live in a pretty chill way, and so I love simple things like surfing. For me is such a gift, and I feel that I'm so wealthy because I get to surf for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and go out for breakfast, go into clinic, you know, work a full day of clinical practice, and then go to the spa in the evening and have a sauna and a cold plunge. That's like, I'm feeling so nourished in all areas of
You're a rich man just for that.
Totally. And it just happens that I'm also like really well compensated for the work that I do because people really love it. So that's now an opportunity to pay that forward in the way that we run trainings and retreats and the offerings there that we do, and how we can, you know, pay forward and even support some people that want to come through our trainings in that way financially. Yeah,
that's really interesting, man. Very interesting. But I mean, I know for a fact that there's a substantial amount of the audience that watches or listens to this podcast, they're not actually here in Bali. I mean, I've looked at the analytics, there's people in Malawi and all sorts that listen to this, which is really cool, but the largest part of the audience is usually between the US, but mostly the UK.
Yeah.
So obviously, not everyone in the UK will have access to Bali. Is there any resources online that you could point people towards to find out maybe a wee bit more about breathwork? Or
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's worth mentioning there's very different styles of breathwork.
Yeah.
And so there's some breathwork techniques out there that are kind of more like the yogic tradition of pranayamas. So they're prescribed. So it's like inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. And that's called a box breath. And a box breath is a really regulating, calming breath. It's regulating the inhale, the hold, the exhale, and the hold at the bottom. And so we can build up from 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. We can do inhale for 8. Anyway, it really calms and grounds and presences us. So that's a prescribed technique. The style of breathwork that I teach is not using the conscious mind. So what we're doing is we're actually inviting a trance state. And so I never teach this in any other way than in person.
Okay.
So I never recommend it to anybody.
Okay, no, that's fair enough.
To practice on that. Yeah. So when we say like breath work, there's a variety of styles of breath work. Specifically, getting in touch with your breath is amazing. There's lots of different online platforms that are fantastic, and I'll be building one later in the year, specifically for some coaching of the breath. The technique that I'm talking about is called conscious connected breathing, CCB. Most practitioners will only ever teach it in person. That's kind of a vow that we've all made to ourselves to do it safely.
The magic circle.
Yeah, and there's a couple of people who do it online that I can't endorse.
Okay.
I don't believe.
But that's good to know, because
yes.
Be aware of false prophets, you know.
Thank you. I don't believe it's safe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I wouldn't attempt to guide someone on a psychedelic journey without being near them. Yeah. You know, it's like I wouldn't put on Skype. Technology is amazing, but I wouldn't put on Skype or WhatsApp and then invite someone to take mushrooms and watch them go through all amazing amounts of misery and sit on the other end of the camera and think that I can support them. Like that's not real.
It's dangerous.
It is. So teach for me, like, my perspective, for what it's worth, is, teaching this style of breathwork online is unethical and irresponsible. So
that's really good to know. That's really good to know, because if I hadn't addressed this, someone might have went and Googled, I'm interested in breathwork, but I'm in the UK, I don't have access to Bali, I want to find out more. Yeah. And they may have went down the wrong path, so it's really important to know that.
And that might have been the right path for them to discover that that's not right for them. And so, the people are obviously teaching this for a reason. They think in their mind that it's the best way to share it, and that's okay. Like, if that's what they're doing, great. I can, bring up a number of valid reasons as to why it's actually really not supporting the client. Beyond that, circling back to your inquiry, if someone's in the UK and they want to discover specifically conscious connected breathing, I know there are some practitioners in London. I make a point of only ever recommending someone who's breathed me.
Right.
So if someone hasn't worked with me, I don't know how good they are.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to recommend them.
Yeah.
So that's it. So
yeah, no, that's fair enough.
I can recommend like all of my team in Canada.
Again, your recommendations are a reflection of you. You know,
Thank you.
people who you teach are a reflection of you.
Totally, and
Yeah.
so I fully endorse those people. When it comes to people in the UK who I haven't worked with, I don't know if there's any breath workers in the UK
Yes.
who want an endorsement. I have so many clients who are looking for breathwork in London,
Yes.
who are coming through Bali. So like,
This is a perfect opportunity for someone who's maybe in the UK to come
Yeah.
and learn from you,
please.
and then go back to the UK.
Yeah. And similarly, any breath workers that are in the UK
Yes.
that, you know, want a plug or some endorsement or me to feed them clients who I've worked with here who have been exposed to what I do,
Yeah.
and if we're aligned enough, or any breath workers that are operating at a high level that want to up level and get to the next level of understanding the nervous system,
Yeah.
because I'm super precise and clinical with my breath work. If anybody wants to learn that, like, reach out, come over here, let's build a little course for you and maybe a couple of friends. Let's get everybody at a really high level, and then let's continue to share these teachings in the best way that we can with integrity.
It's like the Bali Breathwork franchise.
That's potential. So yeah, some steps down the line is I am working with the clinic I work in. We're starting to formulate this idea of building a breathwork school here.
Yeah.
So that would be a custom facility.
That's really exciting.
And we would actually train Indonesians
Yeah.
alongside with foreigners. And so that would be an opportunity I really believe in, so like, yeah, I grew up in the UK, my DNA, my heritage is all English. I moved to Canada and I became a visitor to that land, and it gave me a different perspective, and I recognized I was also a visitor to the UK, but I didn't realize. So I have this perspective that I'm always a visitor.
Yes.
And in that way I always tread lightly with respect to the people of that land. I don't have a right, I don't have an entitlement to anything, it's a gift. So when I'm here, I'm very mindful of how I'm operating in the community. So part of that is recognizing that, again, I'm a visitor to Bali, and I feel that the welcome is huge from the locals here. And what I'd really like to do is create reciprocity. They've invited me in and welcomed me, and they're supporting me here. How can I support and return back to them? So part of that now is I have a prayer. If there are any Balinese people here who are listening,
Yes.
who would like to train in breathwork, reach out, because that's now my next step, is to actually train some Balinese practitioners
Yeah. It's,
who can start to share the teachings into the community.
yeah. I think that's very important to give back, especially
Yeah.
here in Bali, because the Balinese people have given up so much. It's very important to be mindful of them and to give back. So that's really important.
Yeah, we're in a relationship with them, right? And
Yeah.
it's, you know, I recognize, you know, there's so many teachings around white privilege, and, you know, I'm a white male who grew up in a fairly affluent family and went to a private school, which was horrifically traumatic for the record, and we won't go there. But anyway, like, that's the idea that, I mean, like, I have more than someone else, which is a total, like, fallacy for a start. But I do have a worldview, and I have a lived experience that, with that, for me, comes a sense of responsibility, that I know certain things about the human body and the human experience and my relationship to nature, that I want to continue to live in a way that respects and honors that. Yeah, and part of that is, how can I help support, you know, other people in awakening to the truth of how to live in harmony with self and other, and environment. So yeah, I'm really stoked to train some Balinese people in these teachings, and then to integrate them into a clinic space where they can have, you know, a really good way to support people who are visiting this money, create a really good income and support their families, and then take these teachings into community and run community circles. And that's the way that we'll be able to spread this teaching into community, and then from community to community.
Yeah.
So creating these Balinese community leaders for breathwork is kind of my next step in the next kind of year.
That's exciting. That's
Yeah.
really exciting, man. It's really cool to be able to give back to the people that, you know, have provided for you. So,
Yeah,
as you say,
exactly.
being a visitor is,
Yeah.
they've made the Balinese people 99.999% of the time make us all feel very welcome. You know, they're beautiful people. So that will mean a lot to them as well. The fact that you give them, you know, and you pay it forward with karma and stuff like that as well, which is very important to the Balinese people. They swear by karma as if it's a religion. So if you can get some good karma from the Balinese, then you're doing the right thing. So the next point is being an expert of the mind, body, and soul. I am fascinated. What is your day-to-day routine in terms of the breath work? Like, what do you incorporate into your day-to-day routine? What would you not go without doing in terms of, like, when you wake up? Are there certain things that you must do or not do and stuff like that?
Thanks, bro. So, like, I used to be like protocol jail. It was just like I was so strict with myself, and that was really needed to create healthy boundaries with myself and good regulation of my systems. So now I have a little bit more leniency with myself. I have a little bit more flexibility, and I have a little bit more kind of tolerance. So like my windows aren't like I can drink a beer and everything's fine. You know? I'm not going to then go and like smash 10 more. But there was a time where I didn't have that. I could just stop at one, and so that was a deep learning as an example. So my daily rituals right now. A work day is pretty structured. So depending on if the surf. So my morning ritual is usually I'll get up at 6 a.m. and the first hour of my day is mine, in as much as like I'll spend 1 hour doing breath work. So that's either breath work or movement. I have a variety of different protocols in the morning, so it might be my qigong movement rituals, and it might be just focused breath. So that's going to be like I'll do like a breath of fire, or like just a certain movement of breath that's going to regulate my system. So I have a 1 hour breath routine. And if I'm in clinic and I'm not surfing, that's what I'm going to do. So 6 a.m. I'll wake up. I'll either go surfing for like an hour and a half in the morning, first thing, empty stomach on like a liter of water. And then I'll have breakfast. And then I'll check my emails and be in the clinic at 9 a.m. I'll work 9 until 12:30. At 12:30, I drive up the street to the spa. I do 15 minutes in the sauna and 5 minutes in the cold plunge. I then eat a vegetarian meal that's super light. And then I do 10 minutes of conscious connected breathing in my clinic room. And then I have another client at 1:30. So that's my 1 hour lunch break. And it's like full system reset.
It's quite regimental then.
Like, super regimental, yeah. And then from 1:30 until 5, I have 3 more hours of clinic time. At 5 o'clock I finish, and I go straight back to the spa again, and I do about 45 minutes to an hour of hot cold therapy with meditation. And then I finish, and then normally it kind of depends where I'm at there. I might see a friend for dinner. It might, if I'm low energy or if I need introspection, I'm going to have dinner and then maybe have a massage. Because they're like crazy inexpensive here.
So
I'll have
inexpensive.
a massage for like the equivalent of 10 Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
And then I'll just
come
home, journal, and then do a short meditation before I read a spiritual text and go to sleep.
Is there no Netflix in there? Or?
Sleep for 8 hours. So I haven't had a television in about 8-9 years.
Oh really?
And I don't own a computer.
Okay.
So I run my business off my phone, which I love as technology. And then
really?
I have two people who support me in my business. So one basically is my photographer and Instagram brand manager for Breathwork Bali, and another one is a business consultant who runs all of my focused targeted ads and looks at my metrics and numbers.
What's his name? Is that Anthony?
Yeah.
I know Anthony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Anthony.
Yeah.
Shout out Anthony.
Huge plug for Anthony.
Big Anthony, yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing wizard when it comes to supporting me in my business, and he basically ensures that the people that are interested in my work get to see what it is that I do.
Yes.
And he connects us together. So I have a skill set. We have a great customer base out there that wants to meet me, and he puts us together on social media in such a way that they can then come and meet me in person at a workshop.
Yeah. So
that's kind of a...
And who's the other person? It's not Danielle Montaigne by any chance?
Yeah.
There you go. I know everyone here. I know what they say.
Danielle Montaigne.
Yeah.
So those two are rad, and I met them both early in all of our Bali experiences, and we're growing Breathwork Bali together, and they've been amazing. If anybody wants, if anyone's Bali based and wants just a rad social media marketer, Danielle Montaigne's amazing for content. Yeah,
she's a good person.
And then Anthony gets the content in front of the people that want to see it and need to see it. So as a duo, they're amazing. So I don't own a computer, and
you're in good hands there. You're in good hands.
I mean, it's like amazing. Yeah. So this is the thing about Bali, right? I mean, here I used to own a restaurant. I love to cook. I haven't cooked in 4 months, and that's like unheard of. I've eaten every single meal out, and the reason is it just does not make sense for me to cook here. Yeah,
it's cheaper to eat out, and the standard of the food here is just incredible.
And that's just it. So it frees up probably an hour and a half of my day to do other things, and it's the same with Netflix. Like,
no
I
interest.
Don't watch Netflix. It's
no.
Just like no. I mean, like I'll speed read books. Like I usually read like a book a week. So I mean, like, and yeah, that's been an amazing process. But there's just things I would prefer to do. You know, like hearing people's stories. Like, there's so many fascinating people in Bali, and like I'm bumping into them all the time, and I'm just like, I'm not like going to Amo Spa and sitting in the sauna and talking to some of the people in there.
Is that your Netflix?
Yeah. And I'm like, and it's amazing the people I meet. They're just fascinating individuals that are doing such awesome things.
Yeah, everyone's got a story here, I must admit.
It's unreal, eh? So for me, that's kind of it. So those are my protocols on my days that I work. And then on my days off, I generally, Sunday I won't schedule anything. And I just keep it wide open, and I need that. It's like a buffer of like, even if I scheduled anything, I feel like I've got something to do.
Yeah.
And it's like the not doing is essential. Monday, like maybe see some friends, cruise, just chill, maybe go on a little surf trip, jump on the scooter, rip off it, and just spontaneity as well. And then Tuesday at 6 a.m. I have a conference call with my business partners, Jen and Carmen in Canada for the school.
Okay.
So we do that every Tuesday. And then I usually do some business development on Tuesday. So I have 3 days off a week, but the Tuesday is about business development.
Okay. Is that like reflecting on what's happening and putting some plans into attack?
Just like direction for that. And then, like, the to-do list, following up on emails, like any sort of like client follow-ups that I need to do. If someone's reached out, someone needs some support, I'll generate some Facebook posts. Maybe I'll write a blog. I'll think about, just what's going on in life and the direction that we're headed. What were some big wins? What do I need to do better for the following week? Yeah, that's taking a full day to do that. And this is the thing, like, as a practitioner in this work, having a 5-day work week doesn't work. For me, what I recognize is I can do 4 days of the clinical work, and then I need a day for all of the other stuff. Yeah. And then 2 days off. And sometimes that day for all the other stuff, I just have another day off. Okay. I just, do that.
The beauty of being your own boss.
Yeah, and then I will say as well, I have my son is 14 months old. Oh wow! And so he lives 2 minutes away up the street with his mum. Yeah. And so we moved here together but separate, if that makes sense.
Okay, so like to kind of co-parent here is separately. Yeah.
So my little man's 14 months old. His name's Onyx.
Onyx. Yeah. That's such a cool name.
Yeah. So I see him before and after work where available, and then on my 3 days off, I have some designated times that I see him. So we have ritual. Friday night, I take him out for dinner, and we go on a little man date. And then Sunday morning, I have him every morning. We go to Nude. We have breakfast. We have breakfast there together, and then we go and play at his favorite little nursery area. And so those are, I love ritual and tradition, so I built those in. And then Monday and Tuesday we have our little routines as well. Right. We usually meet some friends for lunch, and he gets to hang out, and that's that. Yeah,
living his best life.
Yeah, and it's, that's just been such a huge teacher for me. Yeah, his wisdom, like he has none of the bullshit that I was taught through the culture or through the impressioning or imprinting.
Oh, he's going to have such an incredible upbringing here, with such a diverse culture. Yeah. With all these, you go down the yoga route or fitness route or totally. Anything here.
Yeah, and I'm really blessed. Like Jess, his mum, is amazing at taking good care of him. She's a yoga teacher. She's a yoga teacher trainer. And so he's growing up in this environment where he's got these 2 houses that he lives between. And he's exposed to the beach, and the Indonesians are so friendly and always smiling, so there's that facial recognition.
They love children as well.
Yeah, they're amazing. I'll go out for dinner, and I'm eating, and then one of them will come over and they'll take him around, and I'll look up and he'll be in the kitchen hanging out, like looking around. He, because of that, his way is so smiley. He's really friendly, he's really engaged, he's looking at everything. He says hello. 14 months old, he's saying hello. He says minum, which is the Bahasa word for water. He says pagi. He says good morning in Bahasa. So he will go out for breakfast and he'll be like, pagi, and waving at everyone. And it's just like he's already learning like probably more Indonesian than I am, which is tragic for myself and epic for him.
Yeah, he can teach you when he gets a wee bit older.
And he will, for sure. I'm going to have to like brush it up.
That's really special that you've got your family here as well. You've got your son who you can expose to this lifestyle and, pass on your legacy, It gives you another purpose. You've got many purposes, but it gives you a real big purpose in having your son here.
Yeah, my biggest intention with him is to allow him to do what he wants to. Yeah. And really listen to like his soul's calling. Yeah. And what it is that he is passionate about. And it could be that he becomes a stockbroker. I don't know what. Like who knows what
he does whatever he wants to do.
He might be an artist, he might be whatever it is, he might be a musician.
As long as he's not hurting anyone. As long as he's got respect, all that kind of stuff.
I just really want him to follow his passion, and like we spoke about, like do what he loves. Yeah. And do that, and just be devoted and dedicated to that, and really love that. And then as long as he's doing that and he's enjoying it, and he's obviously self-sufficient and sovereign, then that's all I can ask.
Would you have, just a quick question? Would you have wanted the same things for him back in the restaurant days before the breathwork? Would you have had that willingness for him to go and do what he wants to do and expose himself to the world? Or do you feel that having a child later in life with this different mindset is allowing you to give him better tools to be a better person, ultimately?
Yeah, thank you, bro. I think the essence really is I had so much trauma myself from my childhood, from a variety of different injuries and accidents from a bunch of poor patterns of relating and relationship that I had and that my partners had. And ultimately, I wouldn't have known how to support and relate to him. And so I think as I did my own healing work, my own deep healing work, it's allowed me to show up as the father that I wanted, and that I actually want him to have. And so it's actually part of my greatest mission is to live with integrity and to live with my own truth, so that I can show him the way. And so I think that's probably like the deepest, because he learns by watching me. He's learning everything, so he's going to pick up on my shitty habits. So what I have to do to be a good dad is to be a good human. And so just like he's really a mirror, and I have to be reminded of that. So
it's just something I've been thinking, because I don't have any children. But it's just something I've been thinking about a lot recently, because I'm 34, my partner's 34. So obviously it's something you talk about naturally. But I always think, if I was to have had a child 10 years ago, the person that I was 10 years ago and the person that I am now are two completely different people. And it's like you, I was going through a lot of traumas back then and recently. And I just feel like now more than ever, if I was to have a child now and bring it up opposed to 10 years ago, they will get such a better way of life, a better teaching, a better understanding, so it's just something I've been conscious of. So I was just interested to know your opinion on that,
I love that. I definitely agree with what you're saying there. Just like those lived experiences that you've shared, like it gives us a more of a grounded way to parent from. And then there's that tipping point of just energetics. It's just like maintaining our own health to ensure that we can be vibrant and energetic with our children. And so I know if I'm continuing to surf and practice my yoga, qigong, and breath work, I'm going to be able to stay vibrant and keep up with him for a few years. And then like have that beautiful moment where, I see him, which is like, really my dream, is I see him like surpassing me physically and also, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like he's going to have a greater level of awareness. It's my prayer that he grows up, not having to heal from his childhood, which is, what a lot of us have had to do growing up in the era that I grew up in with the education system we had. So I think it's great. I think the sweet spot for me, I had him when I was 38, 39 now, and that felt like a really good time for me. And sure, that might not be for everyone. I mean, there's probably some people that had, really healthy patterns of relating from their parents that can have children younger and do a really great job. That's certainly not my case. And I'm really grateful that I've done that deep work and that deep introspection, so that I can hold space for him, so that when he's going through his stuff, that I can just be there to co-regulate. So that's it's a fun one.
Well, it's really cool to see, because it's something I've thought about a lot recently. It's just I'm more aware of the fact that I'm as traumaless as I've ever been right now, and just having the experience of travel and living in Bali and different cultures and all that kind of stuff is, to have a child now, they would get a completely different experience from me as a father than they would have done 10 years ago when I was still drinking and partying and being very selfish and traumatic, going through traumas and stuff. So it's cool to hear it from the horse's mouth, to hear somebody's lived it.
Thank you. And there's two things. Like, I just bought you at least 4 or 5 years.
Yes,
like,
thank you. Thank you.
And the next piece is like, I've never, like, when I saw my son, shit got real. It was just like, I need to have a deeper quality of self-responsibility now, because there's a dependent, and there's a dependent in a totally different way, and I need to support him. And so that made me get serious about my own life. That meant, doubling down on certain protocols and ensuring that business was flowing really well, and making sure that I could support him.
The foundation. Building that foundation strong.
Totally. And part of that isn't just monetarily. Part of that's also like my time. How do I structure my business and my life in such a way that I can see him more and spend more time with him, and not be, that the dad that's 9 to 5 with 2 weeks of vacation. Like, I want to have like months off with my son, and create these amazing experiences. Like, I want to go on
road trips.
That's what I'm so pumped on. Taking him camping and exploring Bali, and going hikes up
in the mountains.
That'd
be so cool.
Like, watching his wonder has reminded me of how amazing everything is. And there's like this childlike curiosity where he picks up a spoon and water and looks at it and plays with it, and he's just like amazed. And I've loved that reminder of how amazing this human experience really is. and it's given me a whole new lease on life.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's absolutely beautiful. Right, before we start to round things up, I'm just wanting to ask, like, what do you think the future is for breathwork? Because obviously it's still a relatively new thing in the mainstream market.
Yeah.
You've got gyms, you've got yoga coming through strong now.
Yeah.
In terms of breathwork, where do you see that, and where do you see the future going for it?
Yeah, explosive.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like I see it in certain communities starting to expand rapidly and massively, but like it's going to explode. You know, it's starting to pop up in a couple of more influential people's lives. And so I can see that, like, people, it's just the power. Like, people understand the power of it, and it's immediate. Like, you're like, no one comes out of a breathwork session and says, yeah, that was all right. It's like, if someone comes in for a 2-hour one-on-one with me, I will probably say somewhere, it would be amazing to run a poll on this, but somewhere in the region of 80% say it's one of the most meaningful experiences of their life. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, wow, what was that? So yeah, it's exploding. And then, like, when I look at the numbers on it, is that quality of, like, the RAS, which is the reticular activation system. If I say red car, all you see is red cars. Yeah. So all I talk about is breathwork. So I see breathwork.
You see everywhere.
It's like, now, what's the reality? It's like people are like, what are you talking about? So I'm really mindful of, like, okay, how much of this is my lens and how much of this is the truth? But what I am seeing is more and more people are awakening up to it, and there's more and more interest, and it's like it's proliferation. People are like, oh yeah, you're the 4th person that I've heard about. And here in Bali, it's crazy. I'll sit somewhere with, like, a Breathwork Bali shirt on, and someone will come over to me and you're like, are you that guy, that Edward, that guy does the breathwork? And I'm like, yeah. And Canggu's a small community, right?
And you're a pretty tall dude with the blonde hair, and
totally. My last name's Dangerfield.
Dangerfield, aye.
But, like, you know Danielle and Anthony, right?
Yeah.
And they're on my team, and it's just like, well, so, like, people are going to meet me. So there's also that quality of here where it's just like a vortex of whirring energy, and people are coming in and having an experience. They're coming to a workshop, they're sharing. So then what I love is they're going out into the world. So this is like an incubator for ideas. And so I see the future of breathwork. Like, it's free. Yeah. It's super stabilizing. Yeah. It's an amazing technology.
Everyone has access to it. Yeah. Everyone has breath.
Everyone has breath. Yeah. It's a 5,000 plus year old tradition. It comes from multiple different traditions, and you know, when taught and held in a really good and safe way, it is fantastic for regulation of, like, the nervous system and healing trauma. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
I'm excited for you, man.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you. I really am. Again, every time I think about breathwork, or think about back to that time that I met you, even this conversation now, I'm pumped for breathwork. You know.
Yeah, bro.
You know? I need to come along to one of these Wednesday night things and have a wee look and experience. Get on the Instagram stories and stuff, you know, and I really want to experience it. I said it to you last time. I didn't follow through because of things happening, but I'm definitely going to come experience it.
So
one of these Wednesdays.
Definitely an opportunity to do a little recap after your session, and just
Aye.
check in again and see where it's flowing. So I'd love to guide you through one, and then have you just, like, comment on it and see, like, you know, what was going on for you. Yeah,
well, hopefully if I'm free this Wednesday, I'll definitely come along on Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be really cool, especially after this conversation. You know, it's still fresh in the mind. Now, I actively encourage anyone listening or watching on the YouTube channel to obviously go and check out your website and your social channels. So feel free at this point to plug whatever you want, plug your website, plug your Instagram or whatever you want to plug. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so most directly for the brand is at breathworkbali.com.
Okay.
And on there was some resources, there's a few other podcasts as well from some beautiful
That's where I found the other podcasts, yeah.
And then there's also a video. I do a 20-minute presentation. I'm actually speaking at Vancouver General Hospital, and I was invited there to speak about trauma in the nervous system. So there's a short 20-minute film there. There's a couple other films that are flying around. I just got filmed by a local Bali crew here as well. So that's all kind of on the website. For me personally, like, I invite people to follow my social channel on Instagram, and it's just Edward Dangerfield. Yeah. So that's my Instagram handle.
There's not many of them.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
Yeah.
And then in the next couple of months, I'm going to be building a new website, which is edwarddangerfield.com. Okay. And I'm going to be putting on a lot more educational resources for people. And then just, you know, as the clinic's flowing and as you know, I've got more abundance, I'm going to take some more time.
Is that more of a personal blog, just to document?
That more of my personal story, personal blog and sharing. And then I'm going to be bringing through some unique offerings. So I'm going to, whilst I'm still going to be here in clinic, which is a really accessible way for people to work with me, and also here in Circle, I've noticed that working with CEOs and business leaders and tech entrepreneurs is a real passion of mine. So I'm going to create basically an offering where people can do immersive experiences, and they can actually come and we'll do like a 1 to 3 to 5 day experience, either in one-on-one or a small group. So I'm just building that as an offering on my website.
You're a busy man.
Yeah, it's like I've got these 3 streams going. So I got like the clinic, and then I've got the school, and then I've got my own little like personal retreat business. That's just like a direct offering, and they're all around the breath, and they're all, one's stable and steady, one's like just twice a year, and then this other one's just going to be like, I'm going to just like invite people here and build a custom offering here in Bali, or go to Australia and work with someone there, kind of thing, and just if I'm traveling or I'm moving through, just set up a schedule where I can go and visit. My intention with that so I can travel with my son.
Yeah, there you go. It's like,
so I want to take him places and visit.
It's a good goal to have.
And like teach people. And then another piece is going to be doing these father-son workshops.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
When he's a little older, I want to get into a relationship of fathers and sons.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that I'm.
That'll be special.
Yeah,
and unique. Yeah.
Camping and surfing and some skill learning, how to learning how to cook together, and just bonding experiences that I think is really important for us to pass on.
So maybe I should get into making a son or get busy, get on
catch
it,
up.
catch up. Give me a few years, just leave that one for a few years. Now, if anyone's watching this on YouTube, I would invite you to leave some feedback on the comment section. Obviously, there's been a lot of value here. Again, this has been as fascinating as I expected it to be, and as captivating as I expected it to be. So I'd really like some feedback, obviously, for myself and for you, just to...
Yeah, I'd love that as well, and any questions as well.
If anyone's got any questions or feedback, if you've made it to the end, we're approaching 2 hours on this podcast. Wow. Can you believe?
That's epic.
It flies by.
It really does, bro.
Hey,
that's crazy.
I know. I've actually actively tried to cut it down a wee bit.
And only one beer.
And only one beer.
I
know. We're running dry here.
Whiskey.
That's why I'm cutting it down. I need to go and get another beer.
Let's do this.
Now, is there anything else you want to add before we can start to conclude this and wrap this up? Or I think we've managed to cover a lot, but is there anything you'd like to say? Or?
Yeah, I think just one thing right now is just the idea of hope.
Yeah.
It's just like if anyone's really struggling and going through darkness, it's just like I've personally been there. I've been in a space of contemplating ending my life and taking it, and I just really want to encourage people to reach out and find support, and know that there's a different way that we can live with more ease and grace, and that comes from within us when we cultivate this deeper sense of self and of knowing and of connection to the breath and to spirit. We actually find that like life can be easy, and so for anyone that's struggling, just reach out and have the courage that you had to share your experience.
And you.
Yeah, and find out what people will come and support and how that will flow back to us and to you, and that's the way. And so let's continue to cultivate that and let's stay hopeful.
Well, I fully endorse that message, and that is the perfect way to round up a pretty perfect podcast. So I just want to thank my lonely patron Stephanie for her continued support on this podcast. And I think that concludes it. So I'm just going to wrap it up with the tagline, which is, this is a wee podcast for big subjects and personalities, sprinkled with a wee bit of Scottish humour. Thanks very much, man.
No, thanks so much, bro.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Bye.